So the number one reason the MSPs lose deals is that they didn't. Adam Anderson, I'm a Virgo, CEO, co-founder of Threat Captain. You have to set expectations on the communication, and then you also have to follow up to make sure that they understood what you said. The unspoken expectation that we have for each other causes the friction. Sell the vacation, not the plane. If you came to me to book a trip to Iceland, what kind of plane do you want? I took you away from thinking about your Eclipse vacation in Iceland and made you think about my product. You're very excited about it. They don't care. If you call me and try to give me money and you're not a fit, I'm not strong enough to say no. You have to do it. I'll never say no, so I always try to make some hoops ahead of the qualification process. If you hire a salesperson and say go sell, and that's all you told them, there's nothing to support them, they're gonna fail. Same thing is with every role. Before you make somebody in charge of something, make sure that you have some guide rails so they can be successful.
Adam, welcome to the MSP Insider. Please tell the audience who you are, what you do, and why the hell did you do it?
I like that last part. Why the hell did you do it? Hi, Adam Anderson. I'm a Virgo, CEO, co-founder of Threat Captain. What did I do? Well, you can't prove anything, and there are no pictures, so I did nothing. No, we're all about jumping in and being the hero that helps the sales guy in the MSP do their thing. And the reason we did it is because we suffered for 6 years trying to do it ourselves, and we realized something had to change. So this is my own personal trauma that I'm actually trying to address by playing with MSPs.
Nice. That hits me so close to home. I mean, that is essentially the story of why SIFT and why me and why now as well. It was just PTSD, battle scars, trauma, all of it from being on the receiving end of vendors as an MSP for so long that like something had to change, and now we're after that. So
yeah, isn't that cool how you can only take something for so long before you're like, okay, I'll do it. I'll fix this. I'll step in.
Yeah. And it was a little poetic for me on my MSP journey, because I'll call it my first big boy MSP, but it was the second MSP I worked for. One of their core values at the time, they've since sold, but was to be the change you seek. Right? Just a different way of taking that quote, and like to be able to end my MSP career with that like beginning core value was to me poetic, because like, yeah, to your point, like at some point you're just like, all right, fuck this. We deserve better. And you go out and you do it. So, all right, to open the show, kind of the format, I got to do things a little bit by the book, is that we actually open the show by I ask you a question that my last guest left behind. So a little bit of a double blind test, but that's what makes it fun and exciting. The individual that left the question behind for you is Dustin Purrier from Giant Rocket Ship. So
Dustin, did he know he was leaving it for me?
He did not. No, okay, that's the nice part.
Would have been trolled if he knew he was leaving it for me. Bless his heart.
No. Yeah, he was interested though after he asked who the guest was, after he'd given me the question. He seemed a little too giddy that this one landed on you. So,
oh crap.
We'll see. Okay. He also says that he misses you, but he'll be happy to never see you again, if I remember that correctly.
No, that sounds right. Yeah.
Okay. So his question, we were talking, we opened his show really discussing the concept of the Peter principle. It's like where people get promoted to their own level of incompetence. And so his question for you was, what is one promotion that you gave that you regret?
Oh, gosh, I have to pick one. So I'll tell you the one that was most significant. And this resulted in me losing $1 million in revenue over 2 years. So I was running my bar, was an IBM reseller, had 25 nerds, started when I was 26, grew it to $3.5 million. Had no idea what I'm doing. No idea. Just scrambling. I remember my first employee was like, hey, you haven't billed for like 80K of stuff. Would you like me to do that for you? I was like, thank you.
Yeah,
yes.
Would appreciate that.
Well, so I got to the point where I was burned out, and I was like, I need to get out of here. So I need a president. I need someone to be in charge. And what I did is I took my best consultant and I put them in as president. Turns out that wasn't a good idea. Then I took my best marketing person, made them president. The joke became, if you wanted to be fired from Palmetto Security Group, all you had to do is get Adam to promote you to president. And the big thing that I kept doing was I expected them to figure it out. I just figured it out. Like we all start our companies, we all figured it out.
Hmm.
I did not give them support. I didn't take the time. I didn't understand what good delegation was, that mentorship was. And so, you know, I promoted people to run my company, expecting them to value an entrepreneurial journey that I could cheer for. But what they really wanted was to be operators and still had me be the visionary and still had me
Yeah.
being involved. And so, I think the Peter principle is kind of complicated, right? Because did I promote them to incompetence, or did I not create an environment where they could be successful? And maybe it's a little bit of
Yeah.
both.
Right. Yeah, I like that answer because what I was hearing and what I was thinking about, which I hadn't really thought about as I've one experienced the Peter principle myself, and I explained in that episode, like that really was my journey anyway. I had really awesome people that trusted me with opportunities that I didn't feel like I deserved, and I certainly wasn't the right person at the time. Like I had to become the person that
That's
I
right.
needed to be successful in the role, right? But that was the choice. But times I don't know, 11 different roles or something in the 18 years that I was in MSPs, and I never really stopped to think about the inverse of the Peter principle until you were describing it, where it's like there is some culpability on both sides potentially. But I think your story hit me because that's how I saw so many of the other MSPs that I worked for, and also just peers. Like they made the decision that way, whether it
Mm-hmm.
was knowingly, unknowingly, intentionally, or unintentionally, like making a decision to solve a problem that was really more about like absolving you of responsibility of doing
Oh
the thing
yeah,
that you couldn't figure out on your own, right? Or didn't have the skills, didn't have the capacity.
yeah. Fight or flight kicked in. And I chose flight, and then I just threw things
Yeah.
at people. And and whenever I see people building leadership teams, or when they're like you're developing a new business system, the impulse is to find someone to think about that for you, and
Mm.
then to run with building the system.
Yeah.
And if you're an executive or if you're in leadership, you don't have the luxury of not thinking about the system. That is your job. Your job is to actually create the strategy, to have the vision. Now you can take inputs, you can have great conversations, but
Mm-hmm.
100% of the time, if you hire a salesperson and say go sell, and that's all you told them, they don't. There's nothing to support them. They're going to fail. Same thing is with
Yeah.
every role. And so,
Right.
yeah, I've really fallen in love with um, before you make somebody in charge of something, make sure that you have some guide rails so they can be successful. Now, I am
Mm-hmm.
pretty bad at it. I just know that I should be doing it. It doesn't mean I execute well, but
Yeah.
it's a start.
Yeah, it's like what happens when you place two inverted Peter principles against each other, and like that lean to
Mm-hmm.
has to have some sort of structure to support it. And
I
that was
think
a
they get married. I think that's
they
what
get me.
happens.
Yeah, right. And then we add to the statistics probably one way or the
that's,
other.
that's exactly right.
um, it made me think of like the way I watched again the MSPs I was a part of, and I'm guilty of this shit too. It's not like I was
Yeah.
special. Like I fell through all of it, but the way that let's just go with the way I used to make the decisions before I understood the implications and ramifications of the decisions that I made was like I actually felt like the problem was solved as soon as the decision was made rather than the
Yep.
problem being solved when I solved through the problem, right? So take the hiring example. It's like, okay, I'm going to hire a salesperson or a president in your case. It's like, well, what does success look like? And what is the definition? And what does it look like 90 days from now? How do I get from day 1 to day 90 in such a way that I've set that person up for success? And then it's just a matter of execution. And
Mhm.
like, that's the hard part. So it's the part that I would ignore, right? And I would choose the either ignorance or the um, diversion of responsibility as well until I realized, well, if I'm having to fire somebody, that's my fault too in
Yeah.
most cases. And so like I had to really reflect and find the introspection to discover that sort of inverse effect of the Peter principle. Yet knowing that I like felt it every single time I got a new role because of how I entered those roles. And so it was like, how do I break that down and do better, basically set people up for success instead of failure.
Well, I love that, and in particularly, what I think is a fun, juicy bit of trauma is when you still have to fire somebody, and
Mm,
it's because you didn't set them up for success, right?
yeah.
And
Right.
so I say entrepreneurs have a fiscally unhealthy attachment to their employees. and you've convinced this person to come work for you. You've got them there, and it's 6 months in, and it's just not working. And it was too soon, and you made a mistake, and they're doing everything they're being asked to do, but you don't know how to ask better questions, and you don't know what to do, and you're hemorrhaging cash.
Yeah.
That's tough when you,
Yeah.
despite the fact that they are the right person, you did not have the right environment. You don't have enough time. It's just like, well, I guess that strategic initiative has to wait because we didn't set that person up for success.
Right. Yeah. And then, everything is at the mercy of it too, which is never any fun. And I like the concept too, of where, if we just call the spade a spade, it's like, okay, I sucked at this as the leader. I put the thing in the situation, but then like you really have to get comfortable, being uncomfortable. Like that is the reality in most cases of the role too, where it's like, don't avoid the crucial conversation or just because the way you said it was like, I convinced this person to come here. This was something I was guilty of often in those early days of management, because like I was great with people, man. So like if I sat across from a candidate, there was no way. If I wanted them, there was no way they weren't going to come work there.
That's right.
I fucked that up a couple of times, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't realize I was doing it. Like I wasn't interviewing someone, I was selling them on the opportunity. So blind to what that created. It's like, how did I end up here? How did they end up here?
I try to talk them out of it now. I'm like, let me tell you what's happening. Yeah. So with our last company, I said, way startups work is a bunch of superheroes get together and they do superhero activity. And the way we measure your success is how many hours. I mean, are you working 10, 15 hours a day? And did everything break and you dove in and you fixed it and now you're a hero? So at the beginning, that's what it looks like. But eventually we're going to switch over to this thing called systems and processes. And now the heroes are the ones who are done with work at 4:30 because they followed the system and they gave feedback. And if you're working past that, that means something horrible has gone wrong. And most people don't make the transition from superheroes to super systems. And so I always tell them, like, hey, I'm going to invite you to understand you're probably going to be with us for about 3 years, and you're probably not going to like working here. So let's make sure we have a launch plan ready to go for when the culture changes and it's not a match for you anymore. And it took me a long time to realize that by having those conversations up front, it gave me so much freedom on the back end to be like, yeah, well, like I said, it doesn't seem like this is a good fit anymore, or I can see it just helps you frame the conversations better when you're dealing with the people by setting some upfront expectations.
Yeah. And that hits on one of the dirtiest words in MSP. It might be in other industries too. I don't know. MSP is all I've done professionally. And so it's really the only thing I ever talk about as if I have an informed opinion. But expectations, man. Expectations in communication was the root of everything that I ever dealt with, whether I was the individual contributor, whether I was the manager, whether I was on the leadership team, whether I was making like equity stake decisions. Communication expectations was like the bedrock of it all. And yet most of the time, people either couldn't or wouldn't, or like it wasn't a safe space to do it. As woo-woo as that sounds, like you couldn't get down to the true crux of the thing to have like a vulnerable or realistic or uncomfortable or crucial conversation in dialogue. And like communication, whether it's even internal or external, like with clients and stuff, like every paratrooper moment I ever got shoved into always came down to the same thing too, right? And like leaning into it was really just like, well, help me understand what happened, right? Yeah. Coming in blind, I am here to help and I'll get you a solution, but like, let's just start by understanding what's going on. And that default mechanism for a troubleshooter and a problem solver and like the tech archetype that's so foreign too, because to your point about heroes, like we flipped the heroic switch. We're all in on solving the problem and doing the thing and producing the result. And it's like communication went out the window. You got a business that like the first time I learned it was that same MSP, my second or third one. Server went down, supposed to be a traditional reboot over the lunch hour, right? I'm the implementation guy.
It's going to be a layup, not a problem.
Yeah, this thing fucking sucked, right? It rebooted. Server 2003. It rebooted to the gray screen where the control delete box would not come up anymore, right? So the OS is host, great, but like not blue screen host. So at any rate, long story short, 38 hours later, finally got the thing back up and running, redeployed, everything's good, everyone's working. Little did I know that the decision maker at that company at the time called my boss, the owner of the MSP, probably about 18 hours in, and was furious and livid, yada yada, all that stuff, right? Like, because he didn't feel like I had a sense of urgency, the criticality wasn't there,
Yeah,
and all
yeah.
that other stuff. There are two things that I learned. One, people can't read me very well because I was calm, and what the my owner said, because he had my back, he's like, what you don't understand about him is that he's like a duck on water. He looks pretty graceful, everything's cool, calm, and collected, but I promise you his feet beneath the water are going a million miles an hour, right? So like I appreciated that analogy because I don't see myself the way others do, which is fine. But the most important piece of that whole story was the teachable moment he gave me was like, dude, you got to stop long enough to just go have the business conversation with the business decision maker, because all Ken was the guy, all he wanted to do was to figure out, do I need to send my hourly employees home because they can't do shit anyways, or do I keep
That's
them
right.
here because it's going to come up any minute? And that was 18 hours into 38 straight hours fixing it, right? And like I'll never forget that because it happened so early in my career. But then it was like, okay, communication and expectations. Anytime there was an outage, take over the scenario. I will follow up with you every single hour with what I know and who needs to know and have I told them kind of updates. And then
Yeah.
you know what to expect and you give me the freedom to try to fix this thing in the meantime, right?
I
It's
love the
just so,
fact that you're setting, yeah, you have to set expectations on the communication. And then you also have to follow up to make sure that they understood what you said.
right.
And sometimes in us nerds will often fall into a trap where we're super smart and we want to get the problem solved and we assume that they understood what we said.
Yeah.
And what they actually happened is they heard what we said, but maybe they didn't understand what we said. And so
Yeah.
I love the idea of, kind of riffing on a subplot of what you were talking about is the unspoken expectations that we have for each other causes the friction, causes the problem. You saying, hey, let me set some expectations. I'm going to call you on an hour, give you an update. This is how I work. And then even better, if you could ask questions, say, well, what's important for you right now? Because I'm trying to get this thing up. What do you need to know about on these hourly?
Right.
Like the first off, it takes a certain level of competency to be able to ask the right questions in a crisis, right? Fight or flight's kicked in, you're doing the thing, you being able to calm down enough to say, what do you need to hear every hour, or have that conversation.
Yeah.
That's something that has to be trained. That is not something that most of us do right out of the womb. And I think that's one of the barriers to addressing this is that a lot of times people, I call it, so to me that's consulting, that's sales, that's all the things. And especially with MSPs, I don't feel like we honor the fact that that's not a natural skill set and you should practice it. And it's okay to be bad at it. Have you ever seen a nerd talk at a customer for 30 minutes without it? Yeah. That's not helping anyone, bro. Stop it.
It's incredibly uncomfortable. Absolutely.
That's right.
Yeah, and there's so many layers and elements to that, and it'll be a great segue into a lot of what we'll talk about, which is like the sales, the discovery. But I think we're in the human element now, so I think we stay here for a second because this is so important and people miss it. To your point, I didn't know this shit either when I was figuring it out. Like I was the guy, like I said, that got promoted into positions I didn't deserve. Maybe I deserved it, but I wasn't ready for it. I wasn't equipped for it. So like all of it was learning on the job the whole time.
Yeah.
And I'm not complaining about it. It was great. It gave me all the experience that I have. And every single time I was in a situation, it always came back to the people parts, right? Like the technical keyboard banging stuff was like such low hanging fruit of the byproduct of what we did that to close the point and to parallel to my experience of what you were saying, the first time I absolutely knew that I was in a Peter Principle situation was when I had traversed all the tech roles and then ended up as the network operations manager for this MSP. It was like 24, 25 people, maybe 27 people, but I was 24 years old. I had no shit about anything, let alone managing people, right?
Good
Like
luck, buddy.
I was a guy that could make decisions, and I did. I was logical, I was analytical, I understood people. That's how I got to be whatever, like the go-to tech person. But that is not the same as making everyone else a go-to tech person.
Mm,
And to your point about hearing versus understanding, which I want you to tell me more about, I very quickly became grossly aware of my inability to, one, be aware of the fact that not everyone sees the world the same way that I do, and two, not everyone is going to approach anything the same way that I do. So then three, which is really where the problem was, is like, how can I lead, manage, coach, train 27 people in different roles to get to the outcome, regardless of if they did it the way I would do it or not? Like there was such a fundamental breakdown in my capacity
yeah.
to be a good steward of their jobs, basically, where I eventually had to just self-eject and go back to being a great engineer until I learned all those lessons later on. But man, the difference between hearing and understanding, I guess I want to unpack a bit further, because I know you've got experience to share there.
So think about this. Most of us, when we're in a conversation, we need to feel heard. Now, some of us have a need to feel heard that is overwhelming, and that's the person who's going to talk at you for 30 minutes. Mm-hmm. And they'll say the same thing in different ways because they feel very much like you need to hear them. And the problem is that's like holding a fire hose and blasting it at somebody. And maybe they don't even want water, but you know the hose is on, so let's go. Mm-hmm. And so you know they're hearing you. You know that the words. But if you don't enter into a dialogue, all right, if you think about the OSI layer and you think about TCP/IP. So by the way, when I teach emotional intelligence, I tell the nerds, which is one of my favorite lectures to give, emotional intelligence for cybersecurity professionals. It's the best. I'm like, you have to develop an API to talk to other humans. So that's the whole thing. So I'll dive back into the other side of the narrative, though, is the words that we use in the English language can have multiple meanings. It is such an imperfect way of communication. And so, especially if you're trying to talk fast or you're trying to get to a point, you have to stop and let people mirror back and forth. And it's almost more valuable for you to let the other person feel heard and understood than to have you actually get your emotional needs met in that conversation. We have to be clear because that's what's happening. You're getting your emotional needs met in that conversation. So if we're in a conversation and we're talking back and forth, and I've got a server down, and you're the person who's running with their heads cut off, the first thing I need to do is reassure you and say, hey, listen, I know what to do. We have a process for this. Before I get started, I need to check in on you. And, tell me about the business. The more you're listening, the more the other person feels understood. And that's what it's all about. It's chemical warfare. Okay, so your brain is an amazing drug dealer. The amygdala loves to dump cortisol, dopamine, all this stuff. Yeah. So your social interactions that you have with other humans is a lot like psychological warfare and chemical warfare. So I know the kind of things to say in a conversation to make you feel good, and therefore you now. So it's a lot to go into. I mean it's my favorite thing is social engineering is biological hacking. So for giggles, I wrote a book that mapped all the different OSI layers to the human brain, and then I took the most effective hacks on the different layers of the OSI and tried to recreate them, psychological manipulation into the brain. And most of them didn't work, but some of them did, and it was really freaky the way that the brain and computers mirror each other in a lot of ways. So that to me is what I mean by when I say understood is you have to take the time to let that person riff with you.
Yeah, no, you are dead over the target there. So the first 11 years, this is where we'll transition more to the sales side. First 11 years I was on the tech side with a year and a half stint trying to be a manager. Then I moved into sales and marketing by way of being a VCIO. This is 10 maybe ish years ago. So like it meant less then than it does now, and it doesn't mean much now, but I was one of those people, which was really just like a sales engineer. I was a glorified sales engineer, right? And by that I mean I went on every single sales appointment with my AEs, and the meetings went a little something like this: "Hey, glad we're here today for whatever the meeting is. This is Jeff," and then I would talk and do the thing, and we'd walk out, and then we would go through the process and we'd close deals. But like that was my interaction, was like salespeople just setting me up, not in a bad way, putting me on stage, and then like I would do the thing. But it was really what you were leaning into that I had to learn really quickly, because when I thought I was king shit, high, like best in the world, because we were closing all these deals and all this other stuff, I didn't know anything about what was actually happening on the sales part, because I was just there for being on stage, right? Lights were on, I did my thing, and it worked great.
Right. Yeah.
Our rate, like all the KPIs, all the revenue, everything else says that I was doing a great job. But like I didn't understand the smoke screen behind the curtain until our top rep left, because they changed the comp plan. Different story. So I took his role, right? Because then I'm like, holy shit, like I was doing all of this for so long, but I was totally missing out on the commission coin. So I moved into that role. And once again, back to being Peter principled, or Peter principling myself, I got my ass humbled so hard on the first appointment I went to that I did all the same things when I was that sales engineer, the VCIO. Thought I crushed it, and I got the phone call from Ryan, and he said, "Jeff, I hate to make this phone call, but we chose to go a different direction." And like after I got done crying and my gut wrenched, like what the fuck happened moments, right?
Yeah.
Actually cry, but I was pissed, right? And I called Ryan back and I said, "Ryan, I don't understand where I went wrong and where I failed you in the decision-making process." We had a good rapport through the whole process, which was what enabled him to say yes to this. But I was like, "Can I come out to your office and take 1 hour of your time? I'm not there to try to convince you. I understand the decision's been made, but I would love to better understand how it was you went through this process so that I can set myself up for success the next time." Right. And he was gracious enough to do it. We sat down, and that is where my world unfolded, because he gave me all of the gold that you just opened the treasure chest to, which is emotional intelligence, his needs as a buyer, his priorities as a buyer, his buying process, all this stuff. It was like literally walking into Pandora's box of this is how you win deals.
Yeah.
And none of that was available in any training, in any books, in any gurus, in any best practice stuff. Like it just didn't exist, right? But he gave me that gift because he was an entrepreneur, and I think he, may have seen, well, I guess I cared enough to ask.
Sure.
So the point that I want to try to position into now is, as we move the conversation to like sales, discovery, selling, persuading, whatever, guiding is ultimately the way that I ran the teams overall, is like guiding buyers towards the destination they already want to get to, rather than forcing them through any particular process, right? Or any of that stuff. We've created a nice little safe space here to talk about anything unfiltered that we want. And you and I both agree in that the sales approach and the discovery process is fundamentally broken across our channel, whatever the right word is for it. Yeah. So let's dive in a bit on that techie side, because that's really the audience we have to connect with. Is like most MSPs start client conversations with like technical audits or security scans or any of that stuff. And I understand your position there to be like fundamentally backwards, right? Because the critical mistake that MSPs don't realize they're making in that discovery process is killing the deal before it even starts.
That's right.
And I want you to unpack that for me.
So let me give you my opinion on sales. And there are a lot of different tactics and strategies that are appropriate for some kinds of customers and markets that aren't appropriate for others. So the pharmaceutical sales go in, I got a pill, you want to buy it? Nope, got a pill, you want to buy it? They're a numbers game. There's not a lot of consulting going on, because that pharmaceutical rep only has that one pill, and you got to buy it or I'm moving on, right? Now, if you're a general practitioner, you can take a lot more time to do discovery, and you can do a lot more time to have a better conversation. So the problem that MSPs often have is they follow the pharmaceutical mindset, where here's what I can do. This is my tech. Do you want it? No? Cool. Next person. And the problem is you don't have enough customers to do that. You don't have enough leads to do that. I call that a simple close, where a simple based sales, where you have one call closes, single decision maker, understood pain point. But the problem is that most of us are selling into complex sales, where you actually have three different buyers. You have an economic buyer, you've got the user, and you have the technical buyer. And what MSPs do a fantastic job. I mean, we dunk on it. We close the technical buyer like a MF, like a motherfucker. And just totally just close the hell out of that guy, right? Users usually are not in the mix of it because the technical buyer is usually the user. So the number one reason the MSPs lose deals is that they didn't do enough discovery to understand the pain points of the economic buyer, right? So when you look at discovery and you look at how you're going to go about this, the first question is the first step isn't to think I'm doing sales wrong. Right. First thing is to say, are my tactics and strategies aligned with how my customer buys?
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll start with that. And maybe you're in some industry where that is how they buy. There's one called closes, that people just know what to do. That's fantastic. 90+% of us are in the complex sale, especially if you're going up market. If you're in the SMB market and there's just one person that you got to close and it's the owner, maybe some of this stuff works. But the more complex the customer, the more sophisticated the sale has to be, which means the more time you have to spend on discovery. I am not mad at FUD. I think fear is a fantastic tool right at the beginning, if you use it in a humane way. When I think about FUD, I think about telling the truth. You have to know. Like, look at this handsome man, right? This guy right in front of you, high blood pressure, cholesterol. I mean, I better eat good and work out. Just because the doctor gave me bad news and I'm afraid and there's fear, that doesn't mean I didn't need to hear it and it's not true. Now, if he left me there, hey, you're going to have a heart attack at 55. You should go smoke more cigars, right? That to me isn't the best thing. So that's where you then continue with the discovery. So what are you doing to be healthy? What are you do? So if you look at a complex sale as the same way as a general practitioner is talking to you, and then the general practitioner's job isn't to solve your problem in that meeting. It's to say, I know these specialists, here's these other things, and it's very consultative. So, I really like the idea of playing from your strengths. We should be talking tech. It's why we're there. It's okay to talk tech in the first, when you first have contact. You just can't live there. It can't be the only thing you're doing. So I was talking to an MSP a couple of weeks ago, and we're working on their vCISO service and how does threat captain look into it. And we're talking about the risk assessments. I'm like, so picture a Venn diagram. You have risk assessment here. Then you have business impact analysis here, and then you have cyber breach or financial impact analysis. And he's like, resting bitch face? It's like, yes, that's exactly RBF. You need to do all three. And if you stop at just the risk assessment and you don't talk about, well, what does this even mean for your business, then doing the financial stuff doesn't even matter. And so what I want to encourage folks, though, is they know that you're not an expert in their business. They're not expecting you to come in and be better. And that's hard for us as nerds because we're really good at stuff. And I don't want to talk about a thing or ask questions if I'm going to have the right answer. So by being curious and by being able to ask the question of, hey, look, if bad thing happens, XYZ, what does that mean for your business? And then you shut up and you let them talk. And then you write it down and say, okay, well, if that happens, what's next? What's next? What's next? So, There's a lot of techniques and strategies to get into. How do you do discovery better? And I could go on forever on this, but does that make sense where I kind of laid out so far?
Absolutely. What I heard you say, and paralleling it to my experience in my world too, is one, like, know what you're selling and who you're selling it to.
Yep.
Set a line in the sand and the difference between what I called order taking and actually selling. So most MSPs come up in the world of it's just order taking, right? Referrals, sorry MSPs, that's order taking. You don't think I'm right, or you want to argue with me? Fine, let's fight in the comments. But let me guess, your questions are probably something like, how many people do you have? How many computers are you using? How many locations? right? It's just all this checklist bullshit that you're going to do what with? You're going to go straight into your quoting package. You're going to type those numbers in, and then you're going to send them a quote. So don't
Yeah.
tell me that it's not selling. That's order taking. But
Yeah.
the industry calls it sales, which is fine, except for that it's confusing as hell and it doesn't help anyone. You have to cross the chasm if you're going to grow beyond just referral-based selling into, to your point, complex sales scenarios. I just called that the professional selling. So like when I was installing a system, it's like, this is a sales system that has frameworks and methodology. It's mostly psychology. And we're going to run it this way. Why? Because it's choreographed to do a very particular thing, to create a very particular outcome. And that's what we did with it.
That's right.
So I do agree completely with that. Saw that hand in hand across 2 MSPs when I was running the growth org. And then the last piece that I heard as well was what I called the cloak of curiosity. Like, you've got to put that shit on before you walk through the door. It's perfectly okay to put on a different persona when you walk into those rooms, because here's the other way I say it. And this came up in a conversation earlier this week as well with an MSP. It's like, would you buy from you? Like, if you showed up the way that you are and you really understand the way that you showed up in that sales meeting, like, would you buy from you? Because I don't think you would if you sat back and watched the tape. And a lot of that can be tricked, or like not tricked, but like you can short circuit your brain. Put on the cloak of curiosity before you walk through the elevator doors to go into that meeting or whatever, right? Like, that was one of the ways I had to do it. I also use fancy socks because that was a way of switching into this totally different reality for me, where it's like, okay, I could put on my uniform. No one's going to see it anyways. Or even if they do, I don't care. It's a great conversation starter. But like, fancy socks was my thing to put on this different persona, to become who I needed to be, to close a deal in a room, or to get people to want to buy the thing that I was selling. Yeah. Not even that. They wanted the outcome that I provided, right? Through the system and the structure and all the other stuff. So yeah, I totally agree with where you are. You're right over the whole target of like my discovery of the way the world worked when I spent the time doing it that way.
I heard a line that I think you're going to like. It's sell the vacation, not the plane. If you came to me to book a trip to Iceland so that you can watch the eclipse in 2026, and I'm like, man, Jeff, I cannot wait to help you. This is going to be an amazing trip. Yeah. What kind of plane do you want? Well, let me tell you, we can do a 747. We can do what kind of seats? You want a window seat? Oh my gosh, let's talk about the air conditioning on these flights. We have the best air conditioning. We have the most peanuts, all of that. Yeah. I took you away from thinking about your eclipse vacation in Iceland and made you think about my product. Yeah. When That's you awesome. Get into what you do, you're very excited about it because you know it. They don't care. They literally, here's what they want to know. The executives, especially when you're talking from a cyber point of view, they want to know, how bad can it be? What costs am I looking at? Will insurance cover it? Because if it covers it, I don't have to think about it. And then, how much do I need to spend to make the first two things, okay? But if you can't answer those first two, if you can't talk about the business and you can't talk about risk reduction in the conversation, and you just go into how you should spend the money, then that's like saying, hey, let's not talk about what you're going to do in Iceland. Let's just talk about what you're going to do on this plane, right? And so I love the whole idea of, if you sit down with a travel agent and they don't talk about your destination and all they do is talk about the plane, that's pretty stupid. It's stupid. Come on, guys. Right. Don't talk about the plane.
Yeah, and it doesn't solve the problem either, right? Like, you're still stuck with, well, I should just book this myself. So very similar scenario in selling an MSP service. Like, well, like, why did I even have this conversation with you to try to solve my problem if all you were going to do is tell me all the decisions I have to make while still having my problem? That's not an effective way to communicate, right? Back to being heard or understood, or making the point. That's a very different experience. One of the other things that was a point that you made in the last area too was in the complex sales, right? So like, it's okay also to acknowledge that maybe you're the type of MSP that either doesn't want to engage in that kind of growth or business or whatever. Like, that goes back to knowing who you're going to sell to and what you're selling and why. But in this version of reality, let's assume the majority of MSPs actually need to understand how complex sales works, because that's how they're going to grow, because that's what they want and need to do. the biggest transition in my mind that Ryan helped me see, but also, God, what's his name? Nate Nasrallah out in the industry. He, at least for me, he may not have coined it, but he coined it for me. You had to pivot from selling to the person to selling with the person. And like
Boom.
that was the best way that I just moved through. This is how complex sales work. I'm not selling them anything. I'm not selling to them. I'm selling with them. When there's more people involved, you got to understand that. So now let's try to make that a little bit more helpful for a technical person, right? A technical person sitting across from a technical buyer, and you have them nailed, and they want it. Everything's all in, to your point, except the economic buyer wasn't a part of that conversation. If they were, they didn't want to be, because it's mind numbing. And then we're confused as to why we didn't win. This is what selling with instead of selling to means, at least how I deployed it, right? One was, if I was in that situation, the tech person generally didn't want the business person in that conversation either, because they didn't want to be exposed for any reason. And they didn't want to look bad in front of that person. It's like, great, I actually just want to talk to you. One, because I can close you, because I can talk tech to you. And two, I can ask you one question that will tell me how I need to approach the economic buyer or the business person, which is, imagine Adam, we're sitting in this room and you're the tech person across the table. It's like, great, I've kind of got you where, yep, we're eye to eye technically, but I know I have this business chasm that I have to cross. Like, Adam, if XYZ person, right, whoever that person is, the leader, if your CEO walked in this room right now and was irate about where things stood, and I gave them this whiteboard marker, what are the 3 things that person writes on the whiteboard?
Brilliant.
As it relates to the priority today? Well, now I immediately unlocked what are the priorities of the business? What does that person care about? And what are the internal conversations that are already happening? And now I can wrap anything that I sell, which is technology. So I have all of the angles I need to know how to twist that Rubik's Cube and get to the economic buyer, even if I never had the conversation with them, because I was selling with my technical buyer, right? You put together your business use case. You enable them to go sell when you're not in the room. And it just kind of works. Thoughts on that?
I absolutely love that. I've said, like, use a magic wand, but let's talk about what happens when you hand the whiteboard marker to the person and they freeze because they're not great at their job, or maybe they're not being invited in. What happens to most technical buyers, like a director of IT in a mid-sized company, is if they've been there a while, they've probably either developed a great relationship with their, budget holders, or they have a contentious relationship. Usually they're not, vanilla.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because they've gone and they sold on FUD so many times that now management is numb to the fear, and they don't trust them with money. So if you hand the whiteboard marker to them and they freeze up, there's a psychological problem there where that person's afraid to go ask for money. They're even afraid to even think about the whole thing. And so when you're selling with them, not through them, but selling with them, you give them the ability to do a thing they're scared of, where you don't have to go by yourself. I'm going to make you look good in front of these people. Don't you even worry, So I absolutely love that. The other thing that you said that kind of resonated with me is one of the barriers to doing discovery, to slowing down, is the pressure we put on ourselves for sales. I have to hit quota. I better try to get a one-call close. I better ask for the money. I got to push for the deal. Coffee's for closers, right? You got to go.
Yep.
And what that can do is force you to front load all of the energy and all of the pushing right at the beginning. And that can work very well for a simple close. But if you do that in a complex close, you're just creating friction for yourself. And so I think it's important to, most MSPs aren't closing a whole bunch of business every single month. It's okay to slow down with these people and to do it the right way. What you're trying to do is close now at a high enough quality that they don't churn in 2 years.
Yeah.
Reduction of churn is better than net new business almost all the time. It's fantastic. So much cheaper to keep her. And, so I'm curious, how do you balance the need to hit quota to a salesperson and then you have to walk them through. You have to slow down.
Yeah.
Slow is smooth, smooth is fast,
Right.
all of that. Have you ever had to experience that kind of conversation with new sellers or with
Yeah.
folks?
And I had to go through it myself first, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
which actually helped, I would say, enable me to lead other people through that same journey. Um, Remember, I got like all of the good brain chemicals being the sales engineer without
Yeah.
any of the personal development or trauma that comes with being a salesperson because I didn't
You're
carry
so
the quota,
lucky. So
right?
lucky.
Yeah, I didn't carry the quota. I just got to be the hero, which I didn't even want to be, but I didn't realize that's what was driving me was the chemical addiction to the win.
That's it.
So when I fell into when I made the conscious decision to flip to the value economy versus the time economy, which most people don't know exists, maybe we'll unpack that differently. But the sales side, right, the value based economy, I was compensated based upon the value that I drove to our clients and thus to the MSP, which is a drastically different way to get compensated than
Mm-hmm.
for how many hours I put in
Mm-hmm.
to do the task. And so that was as amazing as it was petrifying because I'd never carried a quota before. Nor did I have anyone really explain what the hell that meant or what it was going to mean to me
Yeah.
chemically, physically, emotionally, psychologically, any of that shit. And then you take the very first sale that I had, which was an absolute layup that I thought I crushed and I totally botched. And it's like, I'm in the pits of hell, right? Like ultimate doom. And by the grace of whatever, the universe's divine intervention of allowing Ryan to say, come here and let me tell you all the ways you fucked this up, Jeffrey. Like, great. That's awesome. So, like, how did I overcome that? Like, sales, personally, for me, and I've said this before, it is the absolute single greatest profession
Mm,
for personal development
mm. Oh
because
yeah.
it is you versus you. It's not you versus the prospect. It's not you versus your company. It's not you versus your quota. It's not you versus anyone else other than you. The sacred space between your ears, that's the unlock that will get you however much money you want to make under whatever comp plan you have. And it's the most challenging thing you'll ever accomplish or endeavor to accomplish if you ever get there in your life because that finish line always moves. And so there's like this, I would call it a healthy level of disassociation
Mm-hmm.
with the outcome. That's a big part of how to do that. Meaning, yes, Adam, you do carry this quota, which means we have to hit whatever, 10 grand a month in your net new recurring or whatever. But don't worry, right? Like look at the team, look at the results, look at the way that we have delivered and already met this mark. So first of
Ah,
all, it's like it's the 4 minute mile. I use this quite often. So I would normally start it off by saying the name like Roger Bannister, and no one in the room knows who Roger Bannister is. Roger Bannister was the first person in documented history, the first human being to run a mile in less than 4 minutes. Well, guess what? That means running a mile before Roger Bannister did it was impossible. That's how every brand new rep or brand new salesperson feels when they get their quota for the first time. There's no fucking way I can hit that number.
yeah.
And they go into the default mode, especially if it was a technical person. They look at the world through here's the 100 reasons why this won't work. They do not look at the world through here's how I can make this work.
That's right.
So you already set them up for like a double failure by placing an expectation that they feel is unreasonable. And here's the 100 reasons why it won't work. And it's everyone else's fault. So you've got to Roger Bannister these people. It needs to be believable. What happened in succession for the next couple of years after Roger Bannister did it? Year number 1, 2 people did it. Year number 2, a total I think of 6 people did it. By year number 3, it was like 11 people or something had broken the 4-minute mile in the world because it was believable, it was achievable.
Yeah.
So they actually had something to pursue. So you have to make it real. And you have to reassure them and create the safe space that like, I'm here to support you, tools, resources, all that other stuff. But it also has to be believable too. I mean, a lot of companies, in my opinion, screw that up because they don't know how to set comp plans. They don't know how
Oh
to
yeah.
set projections and they don't know how to set quotas either. And so it's just like this really messy thing.
Well, picture
Um,
this. Most MSPs that I know have a
mhm.
bit of owner-led sales in it,
Yeah.
and most of the owner-led sales would like to increase EBITDA. So when they sell their company, they want to not have to be in the company, right?
Mm-hmm.
And without fail, the first couple of salespeople they bring on are absolutely horrible. And it's
Yeah.
not necessarily that they're not the right salespeople. But the reason why I could trust the 4-minute miles because I saw someone do it before and I understood how they trained and I got. When you're an owner-led sales and you're beginning to build your sales force and you're beginning to recruit people and and we go back to the beginning of our conversation where you just throw bodies at it and you don't build the system first, there is no safety. There is no trust me, you're okay. And I think that's a shame. I think that, but also, welcome to entrepreneurship. You're going to go through that.
The owner-led sales mindset. Here's where it was personally diminishing and like psychologically destructive on my journey as well. Was that same owner-led sales individual, right? And now you've gotten placed into this new situation and you weren't set up for success because there is no system.
That's right.
There's no documentation. There's no clarity. There is no measurement. There is no, in some cases, even the goal. And then, even then, the individual that said yes to that same thing, like to that situation, comes to you, Mr. or Mrs. Owner, that had led it before. And the way you approach them is with this fucking attitude. Well, I've done this 100 times. That is the quickest and easiest way to absolutely destroy any hope of that person ever succeeding.
I've said that. I've done that.
And you're blind to it. Yeah. I lived that, right?
Yeah,
and like,
I was that guy. I happened to you. I apologize.
I've done it 100 times. Like, well, great. I'm fucking glad that you did. And I'm glad that you created the opportunity for me to be able to get here to like do the thing. But like, come on, man. How do I go from here to there? It's wild.
Most get it when you say it like that, though. Like if you look at it, like I love an owner-led sales organization that's trying to grow. Yeah. Because I'm like, hey, do you think anyone else can sell like you? Nah. Yeah, you're right, because you have all the power and you intimately understand your business better than anyone else ever will. And often it's going to take 2 or 3 people to replace what you do. You have the ability to warm up the prospect, you're also probably the tech. So, I was like, don't underestimate. Just because something's easy and natural to you doesn't mean that it translates well to other human beings, right? And it's okay to slow down. And it's okay, but also do what you want, because if you don't hire the wrong salespeople and you fail, I've spent $300,000 a year for about 3 years trying to solve sales in my first company, and I would you have to hire the first old guy from IBM, got to get that one out of the way, then you got to go hire, and I did all the things, and the truth of the matter is I was hiring good people, and I never built a system, because at that age, must have been 29. Yeah. I had no idea what the heck that was. And so, if you're listening to this and you're scaling a sales team or you're looking to build a sales team, I think the first step is to slow down, look at your system, ask yourself, what am I trying to get the system to produce? And then reverse engineer from a goal, right? It's because chances are you don't need to hire a whole bunch of sales reps. What you probably need are a blend. Well, it all depends on the MSP, doesn't it, and how they choose to go to market. But
yeah, I love that. And there was another cloak that I would call out oftentimes too. So there was the cloak of curiosity, put it on so that I can show up in the right mindset. Then there was the cloak of invincibility, and that's the cloak that the owner always wore, right? And so when it's owner-led sales and you have the cloak of invincibility, whenever an MSP would come to me talking about like getting coaching or like wanting the system that I was running, like it was pretty easy to start with just like, okay, well, what's your number, Adam? What do you mean, what's my number? Like, well, what do you want to grow by, this year? What's your number? Whatever the number is, it didn't matter. First of all, most of them didn't have one. If they did have one, they'd spit it out. But then you just ask some follow-up questions like, okay, but the only one I cared about was, well, what happens if you don't hit it? And this is to the owner that's in the owner-led seat, right? And then they just go white, or they don't want to have that conversation. It's like, well, no wonder it's always worked for you and you've done it 100 times. You've had zero accountability to even yourself in this case of what you wanted to hit. And there's no implication whatsoever because you're the owner, and fuck you for trying to tell me otherwise.
That's it.
And that isn't healthy or effective in building what you're ultimately preaching, which is the system is the way, right? And even that owner who's grown the company, who is guilty of all of those things that I'm saying, like, I'm not condemning you for it. What I am telling you though is, to Adam's point, like, you have a system. You're not the right person to distill it, probably, which is
That's
why it
right.
doesn't exist, but you do have one. One of the best things you could do, instead of going and hiring your first rep and then doing what Adam and I both did, where we blow it up multiple times because we did it wrong, the best thing you could possibly do would be hire an intern to literally follow you,
That's
a
it.
technical writer even, actually, right? To follow you and distill down what your process is. Because I promise you have one. You just don't call it that. You refuse to call it that. You're not going to put it down on paper. You won't build the SOP, but you have one. Just
Mm-hmm.
start there. You can always make it better. You can
Yeah.
always do something different. But like, just start with the creation of the thing that will outlive you. And now you have something that you can almost set someone up for success by following. That's a huge lesson learned for me too.
When you take that process and you break it down, one of the things that I like to suggest is, and this is why I love discovery so much, one of your blind spots as an owner or as an accomplished salesperson is the cloak of invulnerability, but also you're really smart and you know your stuff. And so when you're bringing on new salespeople or you're building a brand new thing, discovery is a fantastic place to put them into because they're authentically curious.
Yeah.
Right? If I had to do anything, I wouldn't. If you're starting from zero, focus on how do you do discovery. If you're got a complex sales system, then probably focusing later and down the pipe is valuable as well. But you have when I look at failure, and I look at a sales system as lead, qualify, discovery, evaluate, et cetera, right? And I always see deals die at evaluate. It's never post-sales and fulfillment. If you're post-sales and you closed it and the proposal signed, you're pretty much there. Don't count it until the money hits the bank account, but you're in the game. When they die at evaluation, where you've given them the stuff or you've talked about what it's going to be, and now they have to go and ask somebody else. When it dies there, it's because you didn't do that one layer ahead or the second layer ahead. So you either qualified incorrectly, and for those of you who don't know, qualifying is not every customer should be your customer.
Yeah.
And
what?
Wait, he's got a check. He's willing to pay.
Wait a minute. Yeah.
Some customers cost more money than they make you, flat out. And also, some customers are better off with your competition because you have a personality that may not match. So there's a lot of reasons why it doesn't qualify. So if you fail to qualify correctly, and then you fail to do an adequate discovery where you're asking the right kind of business related questions, not just the technical related questions, it's like an 83% chance that it dies at about when it gets to the CFO's desk, when it gets to the procurement officer's desk. It's staggering. And so that's why I keep saying, like, if you can do one thing in your sales system, just increase your effectiveness in discovery. And I also think, and I'm prepared to be wrong here, I think it's one of the easiest things to fix, because you could just write a script with better questions. And I love saying it. Hey, I'm actually a nerd. I'm not a great salesperson. So I wrote a script. Is it all right if I just read it? And 1,000% of the time they're like, it's okay, babe. It's okay. You go ahead and read your script.
We love nerds. But what's important there? Multiple things. But the first two I'm going to call out. One, you mentioned vulnerability, which I quickly realized was the absolute superpower to humans, period. Doesn't matter if it's selling, but let's just go with selling because that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Vulnerability also releases chemicals in the brain that subconsciously requires the other individual to almost mirror you exactly.
There you go.
Right? So if I show up in a vulnerable state, the other person will meet me just slightly below my level of vulnerability, which advances my ability to have a real, hidden, uncomfortable conversation that they didn't want to have anyways with me faster and earlier in the process so that we can qualify, to your point, the rest of the thing the right way or at all. So that was one thing that was huge, and it should be the one thing that people take away and just go figure out, what does that mean? And I hate that guy for telling me to be it. Okay. If you hate money, then that's the case too. So go look at vulnerability first.
Yeah.
The other part was ultimately an example of that is what you just described, humanizing yourself. Like, I'm a nerd. Some of this stuff is kind of uncomfortable for me, but it's really necessary to figure out if or how we can help you. Boom, unlock. That's your script. Go write it.
Literally it. That's literally it. So I have to go back to the biochemistry. I took conflict resolution training with the FBI in order to do negotiations for blah blah
Mm-hmm.
blah. And one of the things they taught us was about vulnerability. And my favorite image is they say, if you see a dog belly up and says, "Come rub this belly," you feel different than if the dog is like, "Rah, rah, rah, rah."
Yeah, yeah,
So who do you want to spend more time with? This big, soft golden retriever puppy who's got a nice tummy and needs to be scratched, or a little chihuahua barking at you, "Buy my shit, buy my shit, buy my shit."
yeah.
The way you start the conversation is going to be the way you finish the conversation. And it's so
Right.
hard to change direction once you get into it. So I like to use humor. I like to use all these different tools that are specifically designed to trigger dopamine, to
Right.
trigger all of these yummy chemicals. And now, by the way, I don't suggest everyone use humor. I've had it go wrong.
Yeah.
Had it go
Yeah.
wrong. So
It's
it's
in the
not.
delivery. All right.
It's a lot of things. And by the way, the older I get, the more inappropriate my humor now is. Where it
Yeah.
totally was funny back in the 90s. Now
Yeah.
canceled.
The world
It's
is in
fine.
a different spot too. Yeah.
But what never fails is vulnerability. Being,
Mm-hmm.
hey, I'm so glad you're here. I'm excited to be here with you. I have to tell you, a little nervous. This is really neat for me.
Right.
I need to. I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. I just need to know a couple of things, and then we'll slide into it. Don't worry, I'm going to be great. Now,
Yeah.
it's also in the delivery. Now that I'm processing this out loud with you, you can do vulnerability wrong. So
Yeah. Right.
talk
Yeah,
to a
that's true.
friend. I took all of my cyber consultants and I put them through Sandler sales training just so they can
Mm-hmm.
learn how to talk. And
Sure.
then I started making them do improv. And if
Yeah.
you've ever
Boom.
seen an
That's it.
uncomfortable nerd do improv, bro, it's the
Yeah.
best.
Yes.
So
And
yes, and
right.
so that's the thing. It's like we would practice. Like if I wanted to just the other day, I was trying to write a JavaScript to do some stuff, and I went and I learned and I worked hard at it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in sales and you're not getting coached and you're not getting mentored and you're not
Mm-hmm.
role playing and you're not practicing, you go in cold assuming it's going to. This is a real craft. It's okay to practice it. It's okay to go get
Mm-hmm.
help. And if you don't have a buddy that you can go and practice sales calls, whenever, so I used to do, I always did enterprise sales because I was selling IBM.
Sure.
So before I went in to any of these sales calls, I always had the the old guy from IBM I hired. He just threw every objection he could think of at me,
Mm.
and then 2 hours later, I'm in the call or I'm in the office, and I've already heard all these objections, and I already know how I'm going to respond to them. So, you know, vulnerability is a great tool. I mean, and this is the thing: is like you should take time to build your tool set. You've got this bag, figure out what
Yeah.
tools you need to put in it, and then practice when you should pull those tools out.
Yeah. Completely agree with that. Like Kyle Christensen always says, like the dare to suck stuff, right?
Yeah.
And that's the truth of it. Like no one shows up in the world, like you said earlier, out the womb being a master salesperson. Like it is a craft. Our society's done away with craftsmanship, right? Like we're not used to needing to build and hone and grow skills, especially in the younger generation. Sorry, what am I? I'm a Gen Xer, I think. I don't remember. I'm 40 years old, whatever that makes me. The generations that are younger than me, they're the ones that have an expectation that they're supposed to be great at anything from the get-go too, because of the way the world has shaped them, not because of them. It's not a problem with them. It's the reality they grew up in. It's different than the one we grew up in. Absolutely not the case with sales, period. But if you can default to action, be okay being uncomfortable, and knowing that you're going to suck until you don't anymore, then you're going to be successful in sales. The last piece is disassociating from the outcome. I think you asked me earlier. I don't know if I finished all those thoughts.
Yeah.
Disassociate from the outcome. I'm not here to make the sale. I'm not here to close the deal. I'm not here to hit my quota. I'm not here to do any of these things, because sales really gets broken down. This might be my version of what you were describing, where 83% die at the end. Sales is 2 decisions and people only ever talk about 1. Sales is the actual conversion decision of, yes, I want to work with Adam and his company. And then the other decision that no one talks about is the logistics. How am I going to get through this, right? Is it the redlining of the agreement? Is it the do or don't I have budget? Is it the who else needs to feel really good about this decision? Is it the I can go on and on and on about what the logistics are. No one talks about the logistics in closing a sale.
That's it.
And that's the part that's happening, why that 83% is the issue, right? Everything's
Agreed.
great. They do want to work with you. They would honestly tell you that after they tell you they went somewhere else. They wanted to work with you. But the objections that never got addressed were the infected questions that never got asked.
We go right back to the beginning of our conversation, the
Yeah.
unspoken expectations, the
Yeah.
words that are left unsaid. So being able to have those kind of conversations where maybe your only job sitting there is to pull the unspoken expectations out of the prospect and the client and to say, it's okay for you to tell me stuff. There's another thing. When the sales system is working the way it's supposed to, that means you have enough leads. That means you have enough time. That means I always started to measure behaviors over results, because I cannot control whether or not a client says yes or not. What I can control is that I say the things I needed to say, that I ask the questions that I needed to ask, that I hear them in the right way and ask good qualifying questions. You have all of the behaviors that you yourself can control. And those are, by the way, the only things you can improve on. So if I feel good or if I feel bad based off of a client who says yes or no, that's tough. And by the way, I always feel bad if they say no. I've never been like, yeah, that was healthy. No, I don't want your money. I do want your money, but also.
Right. And that's fair, right? And it's a great call out, because it is real and it's true. The other thing that was sort of like this truism that I came to build into my system, my framework, was everything was a disqualification system, not a qualification system, right?
Oh, that makes people so uncomfortable.
It does. It just does. Man, it was such an unlock for us, because it also flies in the face in a contrarian way to everything that salespeople are told to be and sales orgs are told to be. Like, they know Wolf of Wall Street, right? They don't know real empathy, collaboration, guidance, vulnerability, psychological components of emotionally making a decision that I can feel good about, and then logically and rationally accepting the decision that I emotionally made. But that's the recipe. Yeah. And if you do it, you never have to worry about the fact that you're disqualifying 60 to 70% of the potential clients that are in your process. Like, one of the biggest things that people never quite understood when they would ask me what our numbers were, right? Like, we ran at both MSPs roughly a 68% win rate. And yet, like, people would just be like, holy shit, I'm only like whatever, 13, 28, whatever the thing is. But it's like, well, first of all, ask me my formula for that and I'll tell you. And second of all, let me explain to you that, like, there's a really good reason why we win a lot. And that is because we're only ever getting to the proposal table with the ones that are going to be great fits anyway. And it's so, like, you know, you can literally rig the game if you understand what the game is. If you don't know the game you're playing, then you're just out there kicking the ball around.
That's right. Well, I'll say one last thing, and then I see our time is beginning to stretch here.
Sure.
When we're looking at who we want to work with, I'm so tempted to say yes to everybody. But I know that if you listen to this conversation we just had over the last hour and you're not jazzed up about it, we're probably not the best fit for, you know, what Threat Captain does, because we're 4 salespeople doing salesy stuff. And it's tough because you never want to say no. And I'm so creative. Anybody, if an MSP comes up and says, I want to buy your stuff, I'm like, I'm going to find a way to make this work for you. Right. Yeah. And what that does is it grows operational debt, where you have the wrong customers in your customer success. Now it costs way too much money or too much time. It's just not a fit. And now, next thing you know, instead of having a very simple, straightforward, easy to understand company that does this great thing for this particular niche market, all of a sudden you're trying to bloat and everything gets heavy. And so if you call me and try to give me money and you're not a fit, I'm not strong enough to say no. You have to do it.
Yeah. Right.
no, that's But so I like what I meant by that is I'll never say no. So I always try to make some hoops ahead of the qualification process, so that by the time I talk to you, because I'm always going to say yes and be your buddy, I want to make sure you've self-qualified through my system before I even get to the conversation of, are we doing business together?
Yeah, that's so huge. And I think that's an innate challenge for those that started it, because we're problem solvers, which the other way to label that is that we're people pleasers. So then you
Ooh.
try
I
to
didn't
hit
like
the I
that.
can't tell you. I
I didn't
know,
like that.
because
That made
you're a Virgo.
that made me feel unokay in here, man. That
Yeah.
was not solid. All right.
Yeah, that Virgo in you just cannot do it, right? So like
That's right.
saying no is the shortest and the hardest word for you, probably.
Yeah.
But
I hate
same
that.
thing for me too. Awesome. All right, Adam. If people have enjoyed our banter and want a little bit more Adam in their life, and they should, I mean, let's get it straight. That's what the truth hurts sometimes, but it's also the best thing ever. Where do they find more Adam? Where can they find you?
So the best thing to do is to go find me on LinkedIn, Adam Anderson, Threat Captain. I think my actual is Adam Anderson CEO is the LinkedIn thing. Threatcaptain.com is where you're going to go to see a little bit more about how we think about sales and how we position to help with discovery. And yeah, I've published a lot of books. So I've got 2 books out there I highly recommend. The first is Cybersecurity Selling, Sales Mastery for Cybersecurity. And again, Google Adam. And then we're releasing another book just coming up called Cybersecurity by the Numbers, which is how a financial impact analysis actually motivates and helps you bridge the gap with the budget holders on the back end. So Amazon, buy my books. They make great Valentine's Day gifts. No, St. Patrick's Day, whatever.
Whatever the next Hallmark day is.
Yeah, if you want to slay it with your spouse or significant other, a stack of Adam Anderson. That's all they need.
Yeah. But who wouldn't want to learn from you? I mean, that's the point. They've dropped so much value here. Obviously, there's a depth of experience beneath it all that we didn't cover. But maybe we come back and go deeper in a certain topic later. But I can't let you off the hook without leaving behind a question for the next guest on the show.
That's right. So the question is, if you could design any tattoo you wanted that Jeffrey had to get as a tramp stamp, what would that be?
All right. That's awesome. I get to ask that in about an hour is my next interview. So
get it done, baby.
That's fantastic. Adam, thank you so much for showing up today and for dropping all your wisdom. Not all, there's still plenty in there, but the wisdom that you dropped today, appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Thanks for joining MSP Insider, and thank you, audience, for tuning in for another lengthy discussion about the things that you need to hear.